Listen well, a human janitor's single touch shattered an alien VP's pride and changed two worlds forever. Mason Parker had long ago accepted that most people never really looked at him. To them, he was just a figure in a gray jumpsuit, a mop in his hands, and turquoise gloves that smelled faintly of sterilizing chemicals. In the gleaming corporate palace of Aeron Interstellar Holdings, janitors were as unremarkable as the fixtures they cleaned. That invisibility could have been a blessing if it hadn't felt like erasure. But Mason endured because invisibility paid the bills, and the bills meant his daughter Lily could have food on the table and shoes that fit. The morning began like any other. His muscles flexed as he maneuvered the high-tech mop across the marble floor, each movement practiced and efficient. The mop's luminescent fibers glowed mint green, leaving faint trails of light that quickly faded as the cleaning solution evaporated. The lobby around him shimmered with futurism, vaulted ceilings lined with silver alloys, holographic banners that floated without sound, and the faint hum of alien machinery in the walls. "Parker, you missed a spot," Foreman told Bark from across the lobby. His voice was gravel soaked in whiskey, and his bloodshot eyes never blinked kindly. "The Aeronarians are hosting a high-level delegation today. One smudge and they'll terminate our contract faster than you can say unemployed single father." Mason swallowed the sigh that threatened to escape. "Got it, boss," he muttered, adjusting the collar of his gray polo shirt. Tull grunted and stalked off, no doubt to find someone else to harass. Mason's gaze drifted to the holographic photo tucked discreetly into his wrist communicator. Lily, missing front tooth and all, grinned back at him, frozen in the innocence of a morning snapshot. The memory of her goodbye hug gave him the strength to bow his head and keep cleaning. 8 more hours, he thought. 8 more hours and I'll be home to help her with her science project. The elevator doors at the far end of the lobby opened with a hiss and Mason's world tilted. Out stepped the delegation of Aeronarian executives, flanked by security aides and assistants, their presence commanding the air. But it was the woman at the center who captured every fragment of his attention. She was breathtaking in a way that unsettled him. Pale violet skin seemed to glow softly from within a stark contrast against sleek black hair pulled into a low disciplined bun. Her navy corporate suit fit like it had been grown around her body, accentuating the graceful lines of her humanoid form. The white silk blouse beneath dipped in a way that balanced professionalism with allure. Around her neck, a pearl choker shimmered, and matching earrings caught the light with each movement. Mason recognized her instantly. Araya Nix, Terran's senior vice president of interspecies relations, the company's shining star, and a woman whispered about with both reverence and fear. The lobby seemed to shrink around her employees, freezing mid-stride to watch her procession. Mason lowered his eyes to the floor and worked his mop with renewed intensity. Invisibility was safer than being seen. The delegation approached footsteps clicking against marble like a drumbeat of inevitability. Mason edged backward to give them space, careful not to intrude. But fate had always been cruelly playful with him. His elbow brushed against a decorative column, jostling the mop's reservoir. The container sloshed, and before Mason could steady it, a thin arc of glowing liquid spilled across the pristine floor. The droplets splattered in slow motion, a glowing streak landing directly across the vice president's spotless white trousers and elegant shoes. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every Aeronarian in the lobby froze, their eyes widening with delight at the humiliation of a human. Contempt hung in the air like the sharp edge of a blade. Aurelia stopped mid-stride and looked down at the spattered fluid. When her gaze lifted, it was colder than interstellar vacuum. "Are all humans as incompetent as you?" she asked in flawless English, her voice dripping disdain. "Or did I simply win the lottery of misfortune today?" Laughter rippled through the delegation behind her. Mason felt his face burn with humiliation as he crouched frantically, dabbing at the mess with the mop's fibers. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He could already imagine Tull scolding the pink slip, the look of disappointment in Lily's eyes when he told her he'd lost his job. But something in him rebelled. Maybe it was years of quiet disrespect. Maybe it was the echo of Lily's hug that morning. Maybe it was simply exhaustion from a life spent bowing his head. Whatever the reason, Mason found his spine straightening, his shoulders squared. He looked up directly into Aurelia Nix Terran's violet eyes, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to be fully visible. And he spoke. Nalveto Marischal, esteemed vice president, he said in flawless, high Arenarian, the most complex and formal dialect of her species. His voice was steady, resonant, and his pronunciation carried the fluid tonal shifts of a native speaker. I beg your forgiveness for this unfortunate incident. Allow me the honor of rectifying it immediately. The silence that followed was deeper than the void of space. The delegation froze mid-breath. Arenarian jaws literally dropped a rare physical reaction for their species. Security officers exchanged bewildered glances. Even human employees paused in disbelief. Aurelia's composure cracked, if only for a second. Her violet eyes widened, disbelief flaring behind her icy mask. It was a moment Mason would never forget. The powerful alien executive suddenly struck silent by a janitor's voice. "You speak?" The high tongue she asked, this time in her native language, her voice softer, tinged with disbelief. "I do, esteemed one," Mason replied in perfect cadence. "Though I regret our first exchange must begin with my apology." He pulled a specialized cloth from his utility belt and bent to clean her shoes with practiced precision. The glowing solution was designed to evaporate quickly, leaving no trace. As he worked, he could feel her gaze fixed on him, sharp as a scalpel, curious as a scientist discovering a new species. Most Arenarians struggled for decades to master the high tongue. Even translators used by interstellar embassies relied on advanced AI to parse its intricate grammar. Yet here was a human janitor wielding it effortlessly. Mason rose cloth folded neatly back into his belt and dared another glance into Aurelia's eyes. Perhaps he said softly in high Arenarian, "There is more to humans than meets the eye." Then with a switch back to English, he added, "Your meeting in conference room Alpha awaits, ma'am." Without waiting for her reply, he resumed his mopping as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But Aurelia lingered a heartbeat too long, her expression no longer disdainful but transfixed with intrigue. As she turned to lead her delegation onward, she cast one final glance over her shoulder. The janitor kept his eyes on the floor, but a small, satisfied smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. For the first time in a long while, Mason Parker felt visible. By mid-afternoon, the lobby buzzed with whispers. Conversation stopped when he walked by, only to reignite in urgent murmurs once he was gone. Humans who had ignored him now stared openly. Arenarians, once smug in their superiority, watched him with curiosity. And Mason Parker, the single father with a mop, realized the galaxy had just shifted beneath his feet. The shift in atmosphere was unmistakable. Mason could feel it the moment he re-entered the staff quarters. Arenarian clerks, who once ignored him, now whispered behind their hands. Human guards gave him curious looks. Even the cleaning drones seemed to pause when he walked by, as if the entire building had absorbed the shock of what had happened in the lobby. He tried to ignore it. He focused on his mop, on the repetitive rhythm of work, on the comfort of routine. Yet no matter where he went, conversations hushed as he passed. Whispers clung to the air like static. By the time he finished sanitizing the executive restrooms, Foreman Tull came barreling in, his face flushed crimson. "Parker," he hissed, looking around as if afraid the walls themselves might be listening. "What the hell did you do in the lobby this morning?" Mason raised an eyebrow. "I cleaned. Don't play dumb with me." Tull jabbed a finger into his chest. "The suits upstairs are tearing their hair out. I've had 3 different department heads demand your background file." "You spoke high Arenarian, didn't you?" Mason shrugged. "I picked up a few phrases." "Phrases?" Tull's eyes bulged. "They're saying you spoke it better than their translators." "Parker, nobody does that. Even the AI linguistics cores choke on the high tongue. Guess I've got a knack for languages." Mason bent to wring out the mop, but Tull grabbed his arm. "Listen to me," the foreman whispered urgently. "These aliens don't like surprises, and they really don't like humans who upset the order of things. If you're running some kind of GameStop, lay low, do your damn job." Mason pulled his arm free. "Relax, Tull. I've got no games, just a shift to finish." But inside his chest tightened. He knew this day would come eventually. You couldn't bury the past forever. His communicator buzzed. A private summons. Mason Parker's requested an executive office suite 42A immediately. The message was signed with Aurelia Nix Terran's personal glyph. His pulse jumped. He'd half expected her to have him fired on the spot. Instead, she wanted a meeting. Mason felt the weight of choice press on him, ignore the summons and risk termination, or face the vice president head-on. Minutes later, he found himself in an elevator that few maintenance staff ever entered. The car rose with silent precision, carrying him higher and higher until the doors slid open to reveal a world unlike the sterile corridors below. Suite 42A was a palace in the sky. Curved windows offered panoramic views of the sprawling city towers shimmering in the amber glow of sunset. Sleek furniture in pale metals and translucent crystal lined the space, elegant yet severe. Aurelia stood near the window, her silhouette framed by light. She didn't turn when he entered. "You've caused quite a stir today, Mr. Parker," she said in high Aeronarian, her tone measured but sharp. Mason matched her language and cadence without hesitation. "So I've noticed, esteemed Vice President." At that, she turned, and he was once again struck by her beauty. But this time there was no ice in her expression, only curiosity. Her eyes scanned him, dissecting him. She gestured toward a chair. "Sit." With respect, Mason said, still standing, "I'm on duty, and I'm covered in cleaning solution. Your furniture deserves better." A flicker of amusement tugged at her lips. "How considerate of my upholstery." She moved closer, circling him as if he were a specimen under glass. "You are an enigma, Mason Parker. Your file says you are a single father educated only in Earth's standard curriculum. Yet you speak our high tongue with the accent of one trained in the capital itself." "You accessed my personal file," Mason said flatly. "Of course. You've become a potential security risk." She tilted her head. "Or perhaps an opportunity." He felt her presence like static electricity, close enough to sense the floral hint of her skin. She stopped directly in front of him. "How did you learn our language?" "That's a long story." "I enjoy long stories." Her voice softened, but her eyes never wavered. Mason hesitated. Revealing his past was dangerous. Still, he saw no point in lies. "I was once a diplomatic translator, before the Cygnus incident." Recognition flickered instantly across her face. The Cygnus incident, the diplomatic catastrophe 5 years ago that had nearly plunged Earth and the Aeronarian Confederation into war. 25 dead. Trust shattered. The memory still lingered like ash across both civilizations. "You were there," she said quietly, switching to English. "I was." Mason confirmed, jaw tightening. "I warned them about the bomb. No one listened. Afterwards, they needed someone to blame. I was the convenient target, cleared of charges, yes. But the damage was done. No embassy would touch me. I had a daughter to support, so the great translator became a janitor." Her eyes softened. "We all do what we must to survive." Their gazes locked. For a moment, the gulf between alien executive and human janitor evaporated. He saw not disdain in her eyes, but recognition, maybe even respect. "You intrigue me, Mason Parker," she said, her voice low. "Few beings in this galaxy surprise me anymore." "Glad to be of service," he replied with the faintest hint of a smile. The silence stretched, charged with something that wasn't purely professional. Aurelia's hand lifted, almost touching his chest, then stopped. She drew back slightly, regaining her poise. "The rumors will spread quickly," she said. "By tomorrow, everyone will know about the janitor who speaks the high tongue." "Will that be a problem for you?" Mason asked. "For me," she arched a brow. "No, but it may be for you. Humans who exceed expectations rarely live comfortably." "I'm used to attention," Mason said quietly. "Not all of it welcome." A smile curved her lips, genuine this time. "Neither are you what I expected, Mr. Parker. And you, esteemed Vice President, are not what I expected." Her eyes glimmered with amusement. "Aurelia," she said softly, "when we're alone, you may call me Aya." The intimacy of the gesture struck him. Names held weight among Aeronarians, and offering her so freely was unprecedented. "Then I'm just Mason," he answered. A small chime from his communicator cut through the moment. Lily's reminder pickup time from after-school program. Mason's expression shifted instantly from cautious intrigue to urgency. "I need to go," he said. "My daughter." Aurelia nodded. "Of course. Family obligations are sacred even among my people." She hesitated, then added, "Perhaps we could continue this conversation tomorrow evening." It wasn't phrased as a command, not quite a question either. I'd like that Mason admitted surprising himself with the honesty. As he turned to leave, she called after him, "Until tomorrow, Mason, who speaks the high tongue." He glanced back with a smile. "Until tomorrow, Aurelia, who sees beyond appearances." The doors closed behind him, but the electricity of the moment lingered in his veins. The world of marble lobbies and alien executives faded the moment Mason walked into Memorial Park. The sprawling green patch nestled between towers of glass and steel had become a sanctuary for him and Lily. The air was fresher here, filtered less by machines and more by the trees that hum faintly, with bioluminescent veins engineered by Arenarian botanists. Lily ran ahead of him, her sandy blonde hair catching the afternoon sunlight. She clutched a plastic container filled with purple gelatin cubes, the centerpiece of her science project. "Daddy, is this alien food?" she asked, poking the wobbling mass with a fork. Mason chuckled, dropping their bag onto the grass and sitting cross-legged beside her. "No, sweetheart, just Jell-O with food coloring. Remember what I told you, density and states of matter." "Oh!" Lily scrunched her nose. "I thought maybe you smuggled alien leftovers from work." The Arenarians would faint if they saw their cuisine compared to dessert. Mason smiled, though his thoughts drifted elsewhere. He hadn't been able to shake the image of Aurelia's violet eyes the way her voice had softened when she invited him to meet again. For years, his life had been about survival, about keeping his head low. Now suddenly, he felt like he'd been thrust into a story far bigger than himself. Dad, Lily waved her hand in front of his face. "You're doing that spacey thing again." "Sorry, Pumpkin." He refocused, ruffling her hair. "Just thinking about work." "Is it because you're famous now?" she asked, eyes wide with excitement. "Tommy at school said his mom works in your building, and she told everyone you spoke alien and made all the aliens' jaws drop." Mason nearly choked on his sandwich. She said that, "Uh-huh. Everyone's talking about you. Are you going to be on the news? Can I be on TV too?" "No TV," Mason said quickly. "It was just a misunderstanding." "But you do speak alien, right?" Lily bounced on her heels. "You can teach me. I want to make alien jaws drop too." He was about to answer when the hum of a hover car drew his attention. A sleek vehicle settled at the park's entrance doors, hissing open. Mason's heart skipped as a familiar figure emerged, draped in an emerald tunic over fitted black trousers. Aurelia. She scanned the park until her eyes locked with his. Mason's first instinct was to protect his private world, to keep Lily untouched by corporate politics and alien hierarchies. But it was too late. Aurelia was already walking toward them. "Is that an alien?" Daddy, Lily whispered loudly, her voice carrying across the grass. "Yes, sweetheart," Mason said softly. "Her name is Aurelia. She's from work." He stood as Aurelia approached, unsure what to expect. She stopped a few feet away, her posture poised, yet less rigid than in the lobby. "This is unexpected," Mason said carefully. "I was on my way to a meeting." Aurelia replied, her voice in English this time. "When I saw you, I hope I'm not intruding." "You talk funny," Lily declared before Mason could respond. "Your skin is pretty. Are you a princess?" Lily, Mason said quickly, but Aurelia laughed, a sound melodic and surprisingly warm. "Not a princess, little one," she said, crouching to meet Lily's gaze. Mason blinked. An Arenarian of her rank lowering herself to a child's level was almost unthinkable. "But my people do have them." "What are you studying there?" Aurelia asked, nodding toward the project materials. "States of matter," Lily announced proudly. "Solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, too. Daddy says that's advanced." "Indeed it is," Aurelia said seriously. "On my world, children do not learn about plasma until at least 8 standard years. I'm 6.5. Lily held up 6 fingers and wiggled another half one. "Then you are quite advanced," Aurelia said with genuine admiration. Mason watched the exchange, astonished. The icy executive he'd seen in the lobby was gone. Here, crouched in the grass, was a woman capable of kindness and curiosity. Something warm unfolded in his chest as he watched her interact with Lily. Aurelia glanced up, catching his expression. A faint purple hue touched her cheeks, the Arenarian equivalent of a blush. She rose gracefully, smoothing her tunic. "Your daughter is remarkable. She has your eyes." "And my stubborn streak," Mason said with a grin. "I'm not stubborn." Lily protested, stamping her foot, which only made both adults laugh. For a fleeting moment, the three of them could have been any family enjoying a lazy afternoon in the park. Not a janitor, a half-human child, and a vice president of interspecies relations. Would you like to join us? Mason asked before he could stop himself. We've got extra sandwiches. Aurelia hesitated, glancing at the device on her wrist. Duty pulled at her posture, but Lily's hopeful eyes tipped the scales. Please stay, Lily pleaded. I want to see if aliens like Jell-O. The executive's resistance crumbled. I suppose I could reschedule my next appointment. She lowered herself onto their picnic blanket. Oddly graceful, even in the casual setting, Mason handed her a sandwich, their fingers brushing a spark of electricity surging through him. Aurelia unwrapped it carefully as if studying a new species. So Lily, she said, your father tells me you're quite the scientist. Lily launched into an excited explanation about density experiments demonstrating with the gelatin cubes. Aurelia listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that made Lily beam with pride. Mason sat back watching in amazement. He had expected Aurelia to be cold detached, maybe even dismissive. Instead, she leaned into Lily's world with ease, her stern features softening each time the girl giggled. For Mason, the sight was disarming, dangerous even, because it made him want things he had long ago buried. When Lily dashed off to collect leaves for her experiment, Aurelia turned to him. She is extraordinary, Aurelia said quietly. You've raised her well. I've done my best, Mason replied, his voice rougher than he intended. It hasn't always been easy. Alone, she noted, it wasn't a question. Her mother left when Lily was 2. Couldn't handle the fallout from Cygnus. Being married to a disgraced diplomat wasn't part of her plan. Aurelia's expression softened, a shadow flickering across her features. The Cygnus incident scarred many lives, on both sides. Mason studied her, sensing something personal in her tone. You speak as if from experience. Before she could respond, Lily bounded back, arms full of leaves and twigs. The moment dissolved, but the connection between them remained fragile and unspoken. As the sun sank lower, painting the park in gold, Mason realized that their planned meeting tomorrow might have already begun here on the grass with Lily as the bridge between two worlds. What had started as a professional summons was shifting into something more intimate, more dangerous, and far harder to ignore. When the time came to leave, Aurelia hesitated. Perhaps our discussion tomorrow evening could be rescheduled. I would not wish to take you away from your daughter. She has a sleepover tonight, Mason replied, surprising himself with how easily he offered the truth. Science club at her friend's house. Aurelia's voice lowered, tinged with something unmistakable. Then perhaps we could continue our cultural exchange. The invitation sent a heat rushing through him. I'd like that, he said simply. Lily waved enthusiastically as Aurelia stood. Bye, alien lady. Next time I'll show you my rock collection. Aurelia's laughter lingered in the air as she walked away, graceful and regal, yet somehow warmer than before. I look forward to it, little scientist. Mason watched her go, his chest tight with emotions he hadn't allowed himself in years. He knew that tonight, tomorrow, and every moment after could change everything. Mason arrived at Aurelia's private residence precisely at 8 p.m., his nerves a taut wire beneath his skin. The building was a sleek high-rise in the Arenarian district, its facade glowing faintly with the luminescent stone his species favored. He had dressed as best as his modest wardrobe allowed, a navy button-down shirt freshly pressed, highlighting the breadth of his shoulders. He still felt out of place as the entry chime echoed softly under his knuckles. The door slid open, revealing Aurelia framed in warm light. Tonight she wore a flowing silver dress, the fabric catching every movement like liquid moonlight. Her hair, usually bound with severe precision, now cascaded loosely around her shoulders. The sight stole his breath. You look, Mason fumbled for the right word, magnificent. A faint violet blush colored her cheeks. Thank you. Please come in. Her apartment was elegant in minimalist curved furniture and soft lighting arranged to highlight the panoramic city view beyond. A bottle of iridescent blue liquid chilled in a crystalline vessel flanked by 2 delicate glasses. Arenarian wine, she explained, pouring. Though humans often find it unusual. Mason accepted the glass, their fingers brushing again. I've developed a taste for unusual things. Their eyes met, and the air thickened with unspoken questions. Mason sipped. The flavor was strange, sharp, and floral with a faint metallic tang. Aurelia watched him closely as though gauging his every reaction. I must confess, she said, moving toward the window today, was not our first encounter. Mason frowned. I'd remember meeting you. Not directly. She turned her expression suddenly serious. The Cygnus Summit. I was there. My father was chief diplomatic consul Tier Nix Terran. Mason froze the glass, lowering in his hand. Memories surged like a flood, the explosion, the screams, the smoke rising from the peace hall, the loss of lives that had derailed interspecies trust for half a decade. He died that day, Aurelia continued softly. And you were the human translator accused of planting the bomb. His jaw tightened. False accusations. I tried to warn both delegations, but they didn't listen. The evidence was fabricated. I know. She stepped closer. I recognized your name the moment I saw your file, and I've spent 5 years searching for the truth. The threads always led back to the same place, the Aeronarian Security Bureau, and to Commander Vexner. Before Mason could respond, her risk communicator chimed urgently. Aurelia's eyes widened as she read the alert. Restricted archives have been breached. Files on the Cygnus incident from inside the building. At this hour, Mason asked, his instincts from years as a diplomat surged back. That's no coincidence. My private elevator can take us down directly. Aurelia was already moving, retrieving a compact security device from a concealed panel. Mason followed the tension in the air, sharp enough to cut. The descent was silent, each floor flashing past in blur. Aurelia's profile was sharp against the glow of security lights, her jaw clenched. Mason studied her, seeing not just the executive mask, but a woman carrying grief, duty, and determination. When the doors opened, they stepped into a dimly lit corridor. The air was cool and sterile, humming faintly with the pulse of data conduits. Aurelia placed her palm against a scanner. The door to the archive slid open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with holographic storage nodes. The blue light bathed them both in ghostly hues. There, she pointed toward a flicker at the far end. A lone figure hunched over a terminal, fingers flying across holographic keys. Data streamed rapidly onto a portable drive. They approached silently. As they neared, Mason's breath caught. The uniform was unmistakable, Aeronarian Security Bureau. Commander Vexner, Aurelia said coldly, accessing restricted files without authorization is a serious offense. The officer spun, his angular features twisted with shock, then narrowed with hatred when his eyes fell on Mason. The human translator, he spat. How convenient. Step away from the terminal, Aurelia commanded. You don't understand, Vexner hissed. His hand drifted toward the weapon at his side. This human was never cleared. New evidence proves he worked with human extremists all along. That's a lie, Mason snapped. Then explain this. Vexner activated the terminal. A holographic display flared to life, showing what appeared to be Mason himself entering a restricted chamber just before the Cygnus explosion. That's not me, Mason said instantly. He stepped closer, pointing to the projection. The cheekbone structure is wrong. The gate is off. This is fabricated. An excellent observation, said a new voice from behind them. All three turned as another figure emerged from the shadows, Director Kelmarin, head of corporate security, flanked by 2 armed guards. Commander Vexner, Kelmarin said calmly, you are under arrest for evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and treason against the Confederation. Rage twisted Vexner's face. You'd protect a human over your own kind. I'm protecting the truth, Kelmarin replied evenly. We've been monitoring your communications with the Proxima Separatists. You orchestrated the Cygnus bombing to sabotage peace. The guards moved in, but Vexner lunged first. His hand shot out, seizing Aurelia, pressing a compact plasma blade against her throat. Nobody moves, he shouted, or the consul's daughter dies. Time slowed for Mason. Instinct took over, the same heightened awareness that had saved his life in past crises. He noted the weapon's angle, the tremor in Vexnor's grip, the positioning of his feet. Let her go, Mason said in perfect high Aeronarian, his voice carrying the weight of formal authority. This ends now. Silence, human, Vexner snarled. You ruined everything. You think you can stand among us. You're nothing. No, Mason said, stepping deliberately to the side, drawing Vexner's attention. You ruined everything when you murdered 25 innocents for your political games. In that moment of distraction, Aurelia struck. She drove her elbow back, slamming it into Vexnor's midsection with precision Mason recognized from human martial arts, not Aeronarian training. Vexnor gasped, loosening his hold. Mason lunged, his hand clamped around Vexnor's wrist, twisting sharply. The plasma blade clattered to the floor as Mason drove his knee into the commander's chest. The guards swarmed, pinning the traitor as he howled with rage. The chamber quieted, save for the hum of data streams. Mason turned to Aurelia, scanning her quickly. "Are you hurt?" She flexed her wrist where a bruise was forming. "Nothing serious, though I see you recognize human combat techniques." Mason gave a half smile. "And I see you've studied them. Your species has remarkable survival instincts," she admitted, her voice softer now. Their eyes met, and the tension between them simmering for days surged to the surface. Mason cupped her face in his hands. Aurelia leaned into his touch, her breath quickening. "I think," she whispered, "we should continue our cultural exchange, somewhere more private." Mason's pulse thundered. "I think you're right." As they left the archives together, the traitors secured the shadows of Cygnus, beginning to lift. Mason knew one truth with absolute clarity. His life had just crossed a threshold. Whatever lay ahead, he would not face it alone. The hours after the archives incident passed in a blur. Mason remembered only fragments, the guards dragging Vexnor away, Director Calmarin quietly thanking him, the hum of the elevator as it carried him and Aurelia back to the surface. But what burned brightest in his memory was the way she had leaned against him afterward, exhausted but unbroken, violet skin, still glowing faintly in the low light. By the time they reached her private residence, the city beyond the glass walls shimmered with midnight. Mason felt an ache in his body, the kind that came after adrenaline faded, but his mind buzzed. He had expected Aurelia to retreat into executive aloofness. Instead, she poured them another glass of iridescent wine and set it carefully on the table beside silken sheets. Their eyes met, and words became unnecessary. The connection that had been simmering for days ignited fully. What began as tentative exploration, hesitant touches, cautious kisses, quickly gave way to urgency. Despite evolutionary differences, their bodies found a rhythm that felt shockingly natural. Violet skin against tan, soft breath, mingling with rough gasps, their barriers dissolved into something primal. Later, as the city's artificial dawn crept across the windows, Mason lay with Aurelia curled against his chest, her breathing soft and steady. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, marveling at the calm that filled him. For years he had known only survival. Now for the first time he felt alive. Aurelia stirred, her violet eyes opening slowly. "Good morning," she murmured in high Aeronarian. "Good morning," Mason replied in the same tongue. She switched to English with a faint smile. "Human intimacy rituals are far more intense than I anticipated." Mason laughed quietly, complained, "Quite the opposite." Her fingers traced lazy patterns across his chest. "Your people are uninhibited." "Remarkably so." "Cultural differences," Mason teased. "Glad to broaden your education." "Indeed." Her tone held playful promise, but before either could pursue it further, the sharp chime of her communicator shattered the moment. An urgent override. Aurelia wrapped herself in a robe and activated the screen. Director Calmarin's stern face appeared grim under the holographic light. "Vice President Nix," Tyrannim, "apologize for the intrusion, but there has been a development. The news networks have obtained footage of you and Mr. Parker entering your residence last night. They are also reporting on Commander Vexnor's arrest in its connection to the Cygnus incident." Mason sat up quickly, pulling on his shirt. His stomach tightened into knots. "How?" Aurelia demanded. "This building's security is impenetrable." "The protocols were compromised," Calmarin said. "Vexnor had accomplices. The story is spreading across both human and Aeronarian networks." Aurelia's expression darkened. "Increased security around Mr. Parker's daughter." Immediately. The mention of Lily sent Mason's heart pounding. He checked his communicator, 3 missed calls from Mrs. Hicks, Lily's friend's mother. Panic surged through him. "I need to go," he said urgently. "Lily is safe," Aurelia assured him, ending the call. "I dispatched security to the Hendricks residence last night. It was standard protocol once Vexnor's connections became clear." "You thought that far ahead?" Mason asked, shaken. "Of course," she replied simply. "Your daughter's safety is your greatest concern. It would have been negligence not to act." Mason felt his throat tighten. A week ago, this woman had looked at him with open contempt. Now she had anticipated his needs before he even voiced them. The screen shifted to display live news feeds. Headlines scrolled in both Aeronarian glyphs and human standard. Janitor and executive in interspecies scandal Cygnus. Incident reopened translator. Vindicated exclusive late-night rendezvous between VP Nix Turan and human employee. Grainy footage played Mason and Aurelia entering the building, her hand briefly brushing his back, his head bent toward hers. Enough to imply everything. So much for discretion, Mason muttered bitterly. The Aeronarian Conservative Council is already demanding my resignation, Aurelia said, scanning the reports. They call this a disgrace to my father's memory. Mason felt a cold weight settle over him. Then I should go. Distance will protect you. Her gaze snapped to his violet eyes sharp. Is that what you want? He hesitated. Of course not. But I won't be the reason you lose everything you have built. Aurelia stepped closer, taking his hands in hers. Mason. For 5 years I have chased the truth about Cygnus. Last night we uncovered it together. Do you think I care what conservative councils say about my personal life? It's not just about us, Mason countered. It's about Lily. The press will drag her into this. Children at school will mock her. She deserves a normal life. Normal, Aurelia's voice softened. Or safe, because those are not the same. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. She'll be labeled the girl whose father slept his way back into politics. That's not the legacy I want for her. Silence stretched between them. Then unexpectedly, Mason's communicator buzzed. Lily's face filled the screen, bright-eyed and excited. Dad, I'm on the news, Tommy says. I'm famous now because you're dating an alien princess. Is she really a princess? Can she come to my school for show and tell? Mason blinked, caught between horror and disbelief. Sweetheart, she's not a princess. And no, she can't. Mrs. Hendricks says it's progressive and boundary breaking, Lily declared proudly. I had to look up what that means. Anyway, bye, Dad. Tell the alien princess I said hi. The call cut, leaving Mason staring at the blank screen. Aurelia's lips curved in restrained amusement. It seems your daughter is more adaptable than you expected. She's 6, Mason muttered. Everything is an adventure at that age. Perhaps we adults could learn from her perspective, Aurelia said, moving toward the window. The city glowed beneath them, restless and alive. The Proxima separatists wanted exactly this to keep us divided. They fear what happens when our species truly connect. Mason joined her, watching the traffic lines curve like veins of light. Despite the chaos outside, he felt a strange calm. For years, he had hidden from his past, from his potential, from any connection deeper than fatherhood. But beside Aurelia, something had shifted. So he asked quietly, what do we do? Her smile was small but fierce. We faced them together, starting with a press conference in 1 hour. Mason stared at her. A press conference? Are you insane? Perhaps. She leaned in, pressing a cool kiss to his lips. But your species has a saying, does it not? The best defense is a good offense. He groaned softly. I've spent 5 years avoiding cameras, and now I'm walking straight into the lion's den. Did the man thrown to lions survive? Aurelia asked lightly, adjusting her robe. Barely, Mason replied. Then you already know the ending, she said, her voice like a spark catching flame. And besides, you won't be alone this time. Mason looked at her, really looked, and realized the truth. He was already past the point of retreat. The next morning dawned bright, but the city felt heavy with anticipation. News feeds churned endlessly, cycling through grainy images of Mason and Aurelia, spliced with archived footage of the Cygnus bombing. Commentators debated furiously, some declaring Mason a symbol of resilience, others branding him a disgrace. Protest rallies had already ignited outside Aeron Interstellar Holdings. Inside Aurelia's residence, the atmosphere was no less charged. Mason tugged uneasily at the collar of the formal Aeronarian suit she had procured for him. The fabric shimmered subtly with each movement, alien in texture but tailored to his broad shoulders. He caught his reflection in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the man staring back. Second thoughts, Aurelia asked, fastening an intricate clasp on her own crimson ensemble, the ceremonial color of truth-speaking. A dozen, Mason admitted. I've spent years avoiding cameras, and now I'm volunteering to stand in front of all of them. She studied him in the mirror, her violet eyes softened by something warmer than amusement. Lion's den, isn't that the phrase you used? Yeah, from an ancient Earth story, a man thrown to lions as punishment. And did he survive? Mason met her gaze in the glass. Against all odds, yes. Then you already have the advantage. She turned to reaching for his hands. You're not alone anymore. The words steadied him. Their transport descended through layers of traffic until the plaza came into view. Hundreds of beings filled the space, a sea of signs and banners. Mason's gut tightened as he read the slogans, "No mixed species," "Remember Cygnus," "Humans go home." Yet scattered among them were others, "Truth for the victims," "Love knows no species," "Humanity and Arena are united." Bigger turnout than I expected, Mason muttered. The separatists mobilized quickly, Director Cal Marin said from the front seat. But so have your supporters, more than you realize. The vehicle slowed at the perimeter. The roar of the crowd vibrated through the reinforced glass. Security officers in gleaming armor formed a corridor toward the entrance of the press hall. Beyond them, camera drones hovered like vultures. Ready? Aurelia asked, her fingers brushing Mason's. He took a deep breath, forcing the diplomat in him to resurface. Ready. The doors slid open. A wall of sound crashed over them, shouts, chants, jeers. Mason angled his body instinctively, shielding Aurelia as they stepped out. Flashbulbs strobed, banners waved. Halfway across the plaza, the line of security buckled. A surge of bodies broke through. 3 Aeronarians rushed forward, black armbands marking them as Proxima separatists. The lead attacker lunged straight for Aurelia, hatred burning in his eyes. Mason moved without thinking. He caught the man's wrist mid-swing, pivoted, and redirected the momentum with practiced ease. The separatists tumbled past them, crashing to the ground. Security forces closed in, seizing the others. For a heartbeat, the plaza fell silent. Then the noise roared back, louder than before. But something had shifted. Even some who had shouted slurs moments earlier now stared with uncertainty at the human who had defended one of their own leaders with such fluid precision. You all right? Mason asked in high Aeronarian, his hands steady at Aurelia's back. I am, she replied, her eyes flashing with something like pride. That was very human of you. Is that a compliment? The highest. They continued forward. Inside the press hall, the atmosphere was no less tense. Dozens of journalists packed the chamber, camera drones buzzing overhead, their lenses unblinking. The crowd hushed as Director Cal Marin stepped to the podium. 5 years ago, he began our peace summit at Cygnus was shattered by tragedy. Today, new evidence has surfaced that redefines those events. He gestured toward Aurelia, Vice President Nix Tehran. She stepped forward, crimson robes glowing under the lights. Her voice was steady, clear. 5 years ago, the bombing at Cygnus took 25 lives, including my father's. That attack was blamed on human extremists, and one man in particular, translator Mason Parker. Today we bring proof that the bombing was orchestrated by the Proxima separatist movement. Commander Vexnor himself was involved in the cover-up, framing Mr. Parker because he had discovered their plot. A ripple ran through the hall, gasps, furious scribbling the frantic whir of drones. As for my personal relationship with Mr. Parker, Aurelia continued, her chin lifting defiantly. I will only say this, I am proud to stand beside a man of such integrity. A man who, despite losing everything because of my people's prejudice, still chose to help me uncover the truth. She turned her gaze, inviting Mason to join her. Mason's throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to run, but Aurelia's faith anchored him. He stepped forward. Almost immediately, a journalist rose from the back, an Aeronarian face twisted with disdain. How can we trust a human? Your kind are violent, primitive. Enough, Mason interrupted in perfect high Aeronarian. His voice rolled across the hall with the weight of ceremony, startling even seasoned diplomats. The complex tones carried authority, silencing the room. Switching to English, he continued. I understand your fear of difference, fear of change. 5 years ago, that fear cost 25 lives and nearly started a war. Today, it threatens something equally precious, the chance for understanding. He swept the room with his gaze, meeting eyes human and Aeronarian alike. I lost my career, my reputation, nearly my freedom, because I believed our species could work together. I still believe that, and I am willing to stand here in front of your judgment and your cameras because some things are worth fighting for. His eyes flicked to Aurelia Violet, shimmering with something deeper than admiration. The truth about Cygnus is one of those things, and so is the woman standing beside me. The hall was silent, heavy with the gravity of his words. Then slowly a human journalist stood and began to applaud. Others joined, first humans, then a scattering of Aeronarians. The sound grew swelling until it filled the chamber. Not everyone clapped. Some sat rigid, faces stone. Others whispered urgently into devices. But the wall of prejudice had cracked. For Mason, it felt like coming home. The rhythm of diplomacy, the careful choice of words, the weaving of bridges between cultures, it flowed back into him like oxygen. But now it wasn't abstract treaties he defended. It was Lily's future, Aurelia's honor, the possibility of a galaxy no longer bound by fear. The press conference stretched on for an hour, questions flying like darts. Mason answered with poise, sometimes in English, sometimes in High Aeronarian, slipping between languages as easily as breathing. Aurelia's presence at his side steadied him. Together, they faced scrutiny, skepticism, even hostility, but they stood united. When it was finally over, the cameras powered down, the drones retreated, and the journalists spilled into the corridors buzzing with the story of the century. Mason exhaled, shoulders sagging. "You were brilliant," Aurelia said quietly. "So were you." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Do you think it's enough?" "It's a beginning," she replied, "and beginnings are everything." They walked from the hall together, the noise of the crowd outside still raging, but Mason felt something shift inside him. For the first time since Cygnus, he no longer carried the weight of shame. Instead, he carried hope. And hope, he realized, was heavier but far easier to bear. 3 months later, Mason Parker stood in front of the mirror again. This time there was no mop leaning against the wall, no faint smell of disinfectant clinging to his gloves. Instead, he wore the sleek charcoal uniform of Earth's newly established Cultural Exchange Corps. The insignia on his chest shimmered silver and blue, the symbol of a future he'd once thought impossible. "Dad, hurry up or we'll be late," Lily's voice carried from the front room. She bounced impatiently by the door, her new dress glowing with faint violet accents woven into the fabric. It was a miniature version of traditional Aeronarian formal wear, complete with iridescent beads in her braids. "Coming, Pumpkin," Mason called, adjusting his collar one last time. He stepped out and nearly lost his breath. Lily twirled proudly. "Do you think Aurelia will like my hair?" Mrs. Hendricks braided it just like the Aeronarian girls in the tutorial. "She'll love it," Mason said, smiling. It still amazed him how fully Lily had embraced the changes in their lives. Where other children might have felt confusion, she had seen adventure. Their apartment in the diplomatic quarter was a far cry from the cramped unit they'd once shared. Holographic images adorned the walls, Mason and Aurelia clearing his name at the formal ceremony. Lily's first day at the Interspecies Academy, the three of them together at Memorial Park, where it had all begun. Mason's communicator chimed. Aurelia's voice, warm and melodic, flowed through. "Are you ready, my heart?" she asked in High Aeronarian. "Almost," Mason replied, slipping easily into the same tongue. "Your soon-to-be daughter is very excited about her hair." "As am I," Aurelia said. "The consul general is already asking when you'll arrive." "Tell him diplomats are never late," Mason teased. "Everyone else is simply early." Her laughter wrapped around him like sunlight. "Hurry, Mason, I miss you." The past 3 months had been a whirlwind. The press conference had ignited a storm of scrutiny, but also a surge of hope. Investigations confirmed Vexnor's treachery. Mason was cleared officially, his reputation restored. Both human and Aeronarian governments had issued apologies, and offers of reinstatement flooded in. The separatist movement, exposed and discredited, had withered, though fragments lingered. More surprising still, Mason and Aurelia's relationship, once branded scandalous, had inspired others. Couples who had hidden in secrecy began stepping forward, emboldened by their example. What had begun with spilled cleaning solution had grown into a movement neither of them could have predicted. "Dad," Lily said, breaking through his thoughts, "are we going to live on Aeronar someday?" The question startled him. "Would you want to?" She tilted her head, considering with the gravity only a child could muster. "Maybe. If they have good schools, and if I can bring my rock collection." Mason chuckled, touched by her adaptability. "I think that could be arranged, but we don't have to decide right now. It's because of your new job, right?" "That's part of it. And Aurelia's job, too. She's important on her world." Lily nodded sagely. "Then I think we should do it. Humans are good at living in new places. My teacher says we're adaptable and curious. That's why aliens like us. Her words struck him with quiet power. From the mouths of children came truths entire councils struggled to grasp. Their transport arrived gliding smoothly through evening traffic. Outside, the city lights sparkled, reflecting in Mason's eyes as he considered the strange path his life had taken. Janitor disgraced, translator, single father, and now diplomat again. As they approached the embassy, the crowd waiting outside proved the media's fascination had not waned. Reporters lined the steps, flashes popping, drones buzzing overhead. Mason kept Lily close, his protective instincts as strong as ever. At the top of the stairs stood Aurelia, radiant, in a gown that shifted between deep blue and violet with her movements. Pearls adorned her hair in an elaborate updo, but it was her smile that captured Mason most. Beside her stood Consul General Renvax, robed in ceremonial garb, ready to preside. Lily darted forward with surprising confidence. She stopped before the consul, bowed perfectly, and spoke in careful, high-Aeronarian greetings, honored one. I bring joy to this meeting. The crowd gasped. Even Renvax's stoic features softened as he returned the bow. Your pronunciation is excellent, young one. You honor us. Mason's throat tightened. Aurelia's eyes shimmered with emotion as she whispered, your daughter surprises me as much as her father. We humans are full of surprises, Mason said, taking Aurelia's hand and brushing it against his lips in a gesture that bridged both cultures. Together they entered the embassy. The reception was a blur of faces, introductions, and speeches. Mason slipped easily back into his diplomatic skin, conversing with humans and Aeronarians alike. Lily charmed everyone proudly, showing off her growing vocabulary. Aurelia glowed as she watched them both, her pride barely concealed. Later, when the orchestra began weaving human and Aeronarian harmonies into a single piece, Aurelia led Mason onto the dance floor. Have I told you, she murmured as they moved together, how fortunate I feel that you spilled cleaning solution on my shoes. Mason laughed, pulling her closer. Not the most romantic beginning. On the contrary, her violet eyes locked onto his. It was perfect. The janitor who spoke high Aeronarian and changed everything, Mason echoed softly. As the music swelled, Aurelia leaned in, her voice low enough only for him. You are not just a diplomat again. Not just a father. Soon you will be my bondmate. The word carried more than the weight of marriage. Among Aeronarians, bond meant unity of mind and body, a commitment deeper than legal contract. It meant a shared future. Second thoughts, Mason teased, though his voice trembled with sincerity. Not one, Aurelia replied firmly, though I am curious about how many more human phrases I can learn tonight. He grinned, his heart hammering. I've always been a quick study. From across the room, Lily giggled at the sight of them, then turned back to a circle of Aeronarian children teaching her a traditional game. She fit among them as naturally as if she had always belonged. Mason's chest swelled with emotion. He looked at Aurelia, at Lily, at the unlikely family they had become, and knew without doubt that this was the life he was meant to live. I love you, he said in high Aeronarian, the phrase carrying depths he could never fully express in English. And I love you, Aurelia replied in English, her accent turning the simple words into poetry. As they danced human and Aeronarian harmonies rising together, Mason realized the truth. Diplomacy didn't always begin with treaties or councils. Sometimes it began with a janitor, a mop, and the courage to speak the right words at the right time. And sometimes it ended with love strong enough to bridge the stars.